In a world that's constantly shouting, silence is your superpower. Today, everyone wants to speak louder, argue faster, post quicker. We've become addicted to being heard but forgotten how to listen. And because of this, we are missing out on the most powerful opportunities life gives us. The power of being calm, quiet, observant, and patient. Let me tell you something you might have never thought of. When you are silent, you don't lose. You receive. We think talking gets us results. But sometimes, silence moves mountains. Let me share with you a true story. There was a boy who always reacted. Someone said something to him, he snapped. Someone criticized him, he fought back. He thought his strength was in defending himself, until one day his mentor said, if a dog barks at the moon never barks back. Yet the moon is still the moon, untouched, glowing, rising. That hit him. And from that day forward, he changed. Not because he became weak, come to those who know when to speak and when to simply stay silent. Let's dive into the 10 silent powers that will help you get everything in life if you practice them. In the hustle and noise of everyday life, we often confuse movement with progress and talking with intelligence. Than the people doing all the talking. Silence has a way of slowing down the world just enough for you to start seeing what others miss. Let me tell you a story. A young man once came to a spiritual master, deeply disturbed. He said, I don't understand people. I try to help them, speak kindly, offer advice, be there for them, but they still take me for granted. I feel like I keep giving and giving, but nobody really values it. The master smiled and said nothing. The young man kept waiting, expecting wisdom, advice, something. 5 minutes passed in silence, 10 minutes, 15. Finally, the young man, slightly irritated, said, why aren't you saying anything? The master replied softly, I was watching, observing how long it would take for you to stop focusing on others and start looking within. You came for wisdom, I gave you silence, so you could see what you were too busy talking to notice. You see, sometimes when we stop talking, we start seeing. In silence, your eyes open not just outward, but inward. You notice people's patterns, how someone always smiles around certain people, but becomes cold when others are mentioned. You start seeing energy, how some environments feel draining and others feel peaceful. You start hearing beyond words. When someone says, I'm fine, but their silence screams louder than their words. It's like watching a movie without the noise. You begin to notice the background, the subtle glances, the small reactions, and that's where the truth hides, in the details that only the silent ones can catch. In our daily life, let's take a simple example. Imagine a workplace. There are always two types of people. One, the overtalker, constantly trying to prove their point, speaking over others, needing validation. And then there's another, the silent observer. They don't say much, but they listen. They read the room. They sense when their boss is under pressure. They notice when a colleague needs help but won't ask. They understand timing, tone, energy. Eventually, when promotion time comes, guess who's trusted more? Not the loudest voice, but the one who understood without being told, who saw without being shown. Silence isn't about being absent, it's about being fully present. It's what allows you to become wise. Because instead of reacting, you're reflecting. Instead of assuming, you are absorbing. And in this process, life teaches you lessons that no book can. Even in relationships. How many arguments happen simply because we want to respond before we've truly listened? But when you're silent, you don't just hear the words. You feel the emotion behind them. You pause before you judge. You understand before you accuse. That's a superpower. And you don't have to be a monk to practice it. Just try this today. Next time someone is speaking to you, don't think about what you'll say next. Just observe their body language, their pauses, their energy. Be present in silence. What you'll start seeing is stunning. You'll realize who's lying without saying it. You'll realize who's hurting even when they're smiling. You'll understand who needs you to listen, not fix them. In silence, you start developing empathy. It's funny. The world trains us to speak well. Schools, colleges, workplaces all value good communication. But no one teaches us the art of listening. Yet, the greatest leaders in history, the deepest spiritual teachers, the wisest friends, they all had one trait in common. They were silent long enough to see what others missed. There's a quote I often reflect on: still waters run deep. It means the deepest rivers are silent, and so are the deepest minds. You don't have to speak often to be powerful. You don't have to be loud to be noticed. Sometimes your silence will speak louder than 1,000 words, if it comes from awareness, wisdom, and understanding. It's being still. Because when you are silent, not only do you begin to see the world differently, but the world also begins to see you differently. People start noticing your depth, your presence, your energy. You stop blending in with the noise and start standing out with your stillness. And most beautifully, in your silence, you finally begin to hear your own soul. That's when life begins to change. Not when you scream for what you want, but when you see clearly what you truly need. And all that begins with one small, quiet step. Be silent, observe, receive. Have you ever felt drained at the end of the day? Not because you did too much physical work, but because you talked too much, argued too long, or explained yourself over and over again? It's because every word we speak takes energy. Every response, every unnecessary conversation, every reaction, it pulls from the battery of your inner. Silence is not just about not talking. It's about knowing where to invest your energy and where to protect it. Let me share a story that might resonate with you. There was a young woman named Zara. She worked in an environment where everyone constantly tried to one-up each other. At first, she tried hard to defend herself. She explained, she justified, she fought back emotionally, respectfully, but persistently. At the end of each day, she'd come home feeling like a phone stuck on 2% battery, drained, empty, exhausted. Not because her job was difficult, but because her mind was overworked. One evening, she visited her grandfather, a quiet man with a heart full of wisdom. She told him everything. He smiled and said something simple: "My child, when your bucket is full of clean water, don't tip it into every puddle you see. You lose what's precious and still get dirty." That line changed her. From the next day, she started practicing silence. Not the kind where you avoid speaking altogether, but the kind where you choose not to respond to what doesn't deserve a reaction. If someone made a sarcastic remark, she smiled and stayed quiet. If someone questioned her unnecessarily, she let her actions speak. If someone provoked her emotionally, she chose calm over conflict. And slowly, her energy returned, her peace came back. She realized she was not weak for being silent. Who have no intention to understand us. We correct people who've already made up their minds. We engage in gossip, debates, drama, and all of it chips away at our mental peace. But silence teaches us restraint. It teaches us that not every comment needs a comeback. Not every insult needs a defense. Not every opinion deserves your explanation. Because your energy is your currency. And just like you wouldn't throw your money into the wind, you shouldn't throw your energy into conversations that don't uplift your life. In the same way, a phone dies faster when too many apps are open. Your spirit drains faster when your attention is scattered across unnecessary discussions. Silence is like closing the background apps in your mind. It conserves your battery. It helps you stay focused. It gives you clarity. And it empowers you in ways that noise never will. Have you ever noticed how the strongest people don't need to say much? That's because they've mastered emotional discipline. They know that silence is not avoidance, it's alignment. It's choosing peace over pride. It's choosing growth over ego. It's choosing to keep your power instead of giving it away to people who enjoy pushing your buttons. You don't have to reply to every opinion. You don't need to participate in every debate. And you absolutely don't need to lower your vibration just because someone is trying to pull you down. When you stay silent in the face of chaos, you reclaim control. You stop being a puppet to external situations and start becoming the master of your internal state. They respect the calmness in your tone. They admire the grace with which you protect your peace. Because in a world where everyone is emotionally reactive, the silent one becomes magnetic. Not because they're quiet, but because they're centered. So the next time you're tempted to respond, ask yourself, is it worth my peace? Is it helping my purpose? Is it uplifting my energy? If the answer is no, because not everything requires your voice. Sometimes your silence says, I value my peace too much to waste it. And that is the loudest statement you'll ever make. One of the greatest signs of inner strength is not how loudly you speak, but how well you control your emotions when life tests you. We've all been in those moments. Someone says something rude, and we feel our heart rate rising. A friend betrays us, and anger bubbles up. Things don't go our way, and frustration creeps in. Truth. Every time you respond impulsively, you hand over your power. The power of silence lies in this one beautiful truth. When you don't react immediately, you give your mind space to respond wisely. Emotional control isn't about suppressing what you feel. It's about not letting your feelings control how you act. I remember a young man who once shared his story with me. He had a temper, not violent, but quick and sharp. Anytime something irritated him, he reacted instantly. A delay in service, he'd argue. A disagreement at work, he'd raise his voice. A mistake by a friend, he'd lash out, then regret it later. I told him, you are not tired from the world. You are tired from the fire that you keep lighting inside yourself again and again. And the fire is fed by reaction. But silence is like water to that fire. It cools it down. It gives space between what happened and what you do next. And in that space lies your freedom. You see, when you pause before reacting, you move from the level of emotion to the level of awareness. You shift from impulse to intelligence. You shift from noise to power. In daily life, this shows up in the simplest ways. When your sibling says something annoying and you stay calm instead of snapping back. When someone cuts you off in traffic and you smile instead of screaming. When a coworker takes credit for your work and instead of creating drama, you let your results speak louder. In those moments, you win, not because you said something clever, but because you didn't let them take your peace away. That's emotional mastery. And silence is its strongest foundation. There's a saying I love. You can't calm the storm, so stop trying. What you can do is calm yourself. The storm will pass. People often ask, but how can I stay silent when I'm hurt? The answer is, you're not staying silent forever. You're staying silent for now. You're creating space. You're protecting your energy. You're allowing your emotions to pass. So you don't say something in minutes that will cost you peace for years, because the words we speak in anger often echo longer than we expect. And silence doesn't mean weakness. It means you're strong enough not to let someone else control your emotional buttons. I once met a teacher who had an extraordinary gift. No matter what students said or did, she remained composed. She told me her secret. She said, before I speak, I check, is it coming from my ego? If it's ego, I stay silent until it passes. That was profound. Because most of our reactions come from ego. How dare they speak to me like that? I'll show them who I am. They don't know who they're messing with. But silence breaks the chain of ego. Not be enslaved by our mood. And slowly, with practice, we begin to master ourselves. We stop being the puppet of our anger. We stop being the slave of our irritation. We stop being the victim of our anxiety. Instead, we become the observer, grounded, centered, aware. And when you master your emotions, people feel it. So the next time life throws a test your way, a rude comment, a sudden disappointment, an unexpected challenge, try this. Breathe. Stay silent. Let the wave pass. Then choose your response. Because that space, that silence, is where your true power begins. Not in the words you shout, but in the peace you protect. Give your soul a chance to speak. Because it always has something to say, we're just too busy to hear it. Every time you sit with silence, you create space for your inner world to rise to the surface. You start to notice what you've been ignoring. You become aware of thoughts you've buried under busyness. And suddenly, what once seemed confusing starts to feel clearer. There was once a man who visited a spiritual master. He was overwhelmed, tired from chasing success, exhausted from broken relationships, and unsure about where his life was heading. He said, "I've done everything. I've read books, listened to talks, spoken to people, but I still feel lost." The master simply smiled and handed him a bowl of water. "Stir this," he said. The man stirred. The water became cloudy. Then the master said, "Now let it sit." The man waited. Slowly, the water began to settle. The dirt sank. The surface cleared. Through intuition, through peace, through sudden clarity that was always within you, just waiting to be heard. But when you never stop, when you never pause, you miss that voice completely. Think about it in daily life. We wake up to noise, phone notifications, news, opinions, to-do lists. Our days begin in reaction, not reflection. And in that cycle of reaction, we forget to ask, how am I really doing? What is my heart trying to tell me? Am I living with intention or just motion? Silence gives you back those questions. And more importantly, it gives you the answers. Have you ever noticed how you get your best ideas in the shower? Or when you're walking alone? Or sitting quietly by a window? One of the greatest tragedies of the modern world is that we become afraid of silence. We feel the need to fill every quiet space with noise, music, messages, movement. But the truth is, silence isn't empty. It's full. Full of wisdom, full of insight, full of everything you've been searching for outside, while the answers patiently wait inside. Even in relationships, the most powerful conversations aren't always the ones with endless words. Sometimes, sitting in silence with someone you love, no pressure to speak, no need to explain,